Here we go. Here we go. Hello, beautiful and amazing souls. We are back for round 2, day 5. I am so grateful, and the energy is it's getting bubbly. It's getting excited as we get closer to this Yule time, as the sun goes into its rest and comes back out, as do we. Just a reminder that we are connected to all that is. And as the earth and the sun go into its vortex, so do we. Really a reminder that we are coming into a rebirth after this Yule time. So really, like we've been saying throughout these last 5 days, like what are you really cultivating? Habits, health, lifestyles, relationships, homes, cars, family, whatever that is. Like there is no limit to health, wealth, and abundance, and whatever that looks like. Really call that in and really hold that vision for the transformation to take place within this next week or so as we get close to this full planetary alignment on January 25th. Just a reminder that we are all that is. And we have Lady Dresman. We have Taylor in the house. He's going to present to us. I'm super, super excited. But after Lady Dresman walks us through another beautiful body movement.
Yes, Sovereign Souls, you already know this is the new paradigm where we take dance breaks every hour and a half because we are not meant to just sit on our butts all day looking at a screen. Am I right or am I right? Okay.
You're right.
Right. I know I'm right. At least this time. I'm not afraid to admit when I'm wrong. Taylor knows. So what is our movement for today? We are making circular motions to activate our creative body. Okay, so we're going to bring those circular motions in. And Taylor's going to give this amazing talk on advanced space and time magic, right? This is where creation happens in the liminal, infinite space of time and space, which he's going to talk more about. And we have been going through this immense transformation all week. I just took us way deep into the darkness. And I'm going to share with you a song that I swear, if this artist got money for every time I've played the song, they would be rich just on my account. But this is a song that I have played anytime I have felt, especially that emotion of rage and grief. And the song is appropriately titled Change It All, because sometimes that's what we're doing, right? We're just changing it all. Sometimes that's the ick that we're feeling, like there's just so much emotion because everything is fucking changing, happening all at once. OMG. All right, let's breathe in and out. And as you inhale, begin to bring those circular movements into the body as you need. If you need to activate the physical body, bring the wiggle in. Clear the mental body, bring some tapping. Clear the emotional body, do some swiping. So now we're really coming into that mastery of movement. So circles, swiping, wiggling. We're all here in this embodiment silliness together. Make those circles with your hips.
Take it from me. All of what I know.
Rotate those shoulders. Make circles with your neck.
Talk about me. Buried in so deep. I can only hear.
You can make circles in the energy around you to like clear the space around you.
See as change it all. Find my peace. It's time to fall for you. Oh, myself. So stay on my whisper. Something so sweet.
Inviting yourself into the space where you really gift yourself these few precious moments to fully tap into your body. The body has so much wisdom in it. And sometimes we are in such a hurry to just jump into the next thing, to go into the next, to get it all done. But what if you are already doing everything that you are meant to be doing in this here now? AKA being in your beingness. Can you feel into that peace within you? Making sure you bring some circles into the legs, get that circulation going. Yep. I'm feeling some swiping. I feel some heavy emotions. Yeah, we're shifting. I feel you. I see you. I celebrate you. I encourage you. I empower you. Sacred sovereign that you are. Ah. Beautiful. Almost done. You're doing so good. Getting real comfortable with your uncomfortable. Expanding your mind and your heart and your body to possibilities. Big deep breath. Inhale. You are now in this new state of mind. Anchored to your highest timeline, ready to expand beyond your horizons and amplify the power that is you. Big deep breath, bringing your movements to a soft, gentle close, bringing it all back into the body, into the present moment. And welcome back, welcome back. And now, without any further ado, Taylor Ellwood, take it away. We are just going to be off screen while he presents for the next hour or so, and then we're all going to be invited back in to ask questions, to pick apart the brain of this genius wildling in the human experience.
Oh, thank you. Well, I got inspired by that, so I thought we'd start out with a little bit of sound. What I invite you to do is to listen to this bell when I ring it again. Close your eyes. Fully take in the sound of that bell. And afterwards, invite in the silence. We're going to start off on our journey into space and time by exploring sound and silence, because those are very relevant expressions of space and time. When I think about space and time, I don't think of it as just something which is physical, and I don't think of it as just something that's spiritual. It's a combination of these experiences, and sound and silence is a good way to explore that. When I make sound, I'm vibrating the space. I'm bringing in the arrow of time. And when I'm silent, I'm holding presence with the space. When we feel into that and lean into those experiences, we begin to appreciate that experience where in between the sound and the silence is that quantum potentiality of all things and none. All the possibilities that exist in infinite varieties, and the opportunity that exists to turn one of those possibilities or more into manifest reality. Let's try it again, this time with a drum. I got this recently, and so I'm going to beat this just for a moment, and I want you again to pay attention to the sound and then the silence. I think about space and time, I don't just think of it as a thing that says 1250 and then shows my face. I don't think of it as just the tick of a clock. Space and time is so much more than that. Feel into our spaces. Our space contains within it the living presence of everything else that's around us and everything that's within us. Your human body is a universe of life that you are shepherding along, that comprises and creates the identity of you. And every movement that you make is one where you are moving from one moment to another, from one reality to another, from one identity to another. You're never the same person. There's something always changing. That change may be minuscule. Maybe in the moment, it's just a tiny little change in feeling, tiny sensation. Or maybe it's big. Or maybe it's in between. We're using very human terms to describe something that transforms and changes. When I open myself up to the full range of time and space, what I discover is that there's a potentiality that's always awaiting for me. And it's a question of what timeline do I want to step into? One of the best practices that I have, it's a very simple practice, seemingly on the surface, is to go out for a walk, and as you're walking, to step through time from one timeline to another, from one experience to another. Where were you? Where do you want to be? What's in that other timeline? We have this power, but a lot of times we get caught up in linear time. We get caught up in clock time. It's 12:53. Oh, 12:53 is a very specific container, isn't it? It's a very specific container that says it's this time and it's happening in this space. And that's how a lot of people live their lives. You know, that 9-to-5 working life, for example, which I can't say for anyone else, but it doesn't work for me. It is a good example of what happens when we limit ourselves, when we're living on someone else's schedule. What about living on my own schedule? What does that look like? What does it look like to experience and embrace time and space and all the opportunities that are available to me if I'm willing to consider the possibilities? So when we step across time, we're also stepping across space. I'm literally stepping across space, but I'm also stepping across time. I'm stepping from one moment to another. Another way I like to liken this, and this actually speaks to the internal reality, is let's say I have a result over here. This is where I want to be, and this is where I'm at right now, right? How do I get from here to there? Because it's not just about manifesting a result in the world around you. If you know, this is one of the challenges that I see for a lot of people, is they'll focus on manifesting a result out here. I want this to change in the world around me. But what happens a lot of times is they might get a result for a short term, but then it goes away. Well, why is it going away? That's the question that gets asked a lot. And the reason it goes away is because there is a mismatch in alignment. The result over here requires a change over here in identity. When I look at space-time magic, it's not about doing magic, it's about being magic. It's about living the magical life. It's about being in touch with what you truly want. So if I have a result over here, I have to be willing to grow into that result. And I can do a magical working. I can do, sigils or work with spirits and all of those other things. And those are very powerful tools. But there's something else I have to work with, and I have to work with what's within me and the access I have through my creativity and my imagination to all the potentialities, all the probabilities, and be willing to select one and commit to it. Do I have the willingness? Do I have the commitment? What creates this new reality? I'm over here, and I want to grow to here. I need to expand into the result. I need to expand my identity. Or I need to lean in, as I shared with one person recently, lean into your discomfort. Because the other aspect of all this is that change brings with it discomfort. Here we are in our comfortable lives. Everything is neat and orderly. Everything is under our control. It's not. We tell ourselves it is, right? And then something happens. There's a curveball that's thrown. What? This came along and I didn't expect it. All right. Well, we're challenged to experience that growth, that transformation, to step into the discomfort. And we can either settle for the comfortable discomfort. This is the status quo, where we go through our lives and we are in a place where we're staying small. And when we stay small, we're staying small from a place of, well, this is what I know, and it's comfortable. It might be uncomfortable too. It usually is, because it's swimming in the shallow end of the pool. Not going very deep, not going very high. Speaking for myself, I want to go to the depths and the heights, not just be right here. But it's very easy to stay right here. It's comfortable. It's known. It becomes a blinder like this, where you can only see so much. But if I challenge what I know to discover what I can learn, then I can experience the infinite possibilities, because all of a sudden what I wasn't seeing before, or because I had my hands like this around my face, literally right now, as a blinder, it gets expanded. Now I'm able to look all around me. I'm able to experience the quantum potentiality that lies in wait within reality. And we do this through multiple means of exploration. So we lean into the discomfort, lean into the edges of growth, as hard as it may be, and embrace the opportunities that exist there. A little while back, I changed my life in a really radical way. I stepped away from my own comfortable discomfort, and I did a ritual to Eros and Aphrodite. Now, Aphrodite, goddess of love, right? So really connecting with the love. And not necessarily like romantic love, but love as this cosmic force of mission and purpose. But then Eros. Now, if we look at Greek mythology, there's two interesting stories about Eros. One is that Eros is the son of Aphrodite, but the other is that Eros is actually the oldest of the gods. Eros is the primal mover. So Eros isn't just about eroticism. So many people associate Eros with sex and sexuality. And don't get me wrong, sex and sexuality and sensuality are forms of movement. And yet there are many other forms of movement. So one thing that I would invite all of you today to explore is what the concept of Eros means to you outside of the typical categorization of it. This idea of movement. What does it mean to move in my life? What does movement look like? And as a fun exercise, you can dance every hour and a half. I love that. It's a great idea. But what does it mean to move, not just even physically? What does it mean to move mentally, creatively, emotionally, spiritually? What are we moving toward? Where are we moving to? We often can think that movement is like a straight line, right? Here, point A, point B, and I'm going to walk across that. But movement could be diagonal, more ways than one. It could go in many different directions. Movement could be a curve and a flow like this. Movement can be sound. We can even find movement in silence. Silence is not necessarily still. How often have you been in a space with somebody where you've been looking into their eyes intently and being silent? There's still movement there. There's still connection. There's flow. There's communication. There is a merging mutuality that forms, that is relational if we are open to it. Or there's a wall. A lot can be said without any words. A lot can be experienced without any words, and it's still a movement. How open are we to the movement? How open are we to the potential that lies by being willing to move in ways that may not make sense to anyone else, but make sense to us? Part of the exploration of space-time magic is the consideration that if there is a specific moment in space and time that I want to manifest, I need to be willing to move in ways that invite the infallible and the intangible to operate. And I may not fully understand it. Magic is mysterious. When I've worked magic, I often marvel at the improbabilities that come into play, the sequence of seemingly weird events that line up and create this synchronistic alignment of probability with reality. You know what usually gets in the way of it? It's our resistance. It's the ways we resist that movement, the way we cling to a specific reality. The more I cling to that reality, the more that I try to hold on to it as tight as I can, the more I get locked up and I can't move through time. But if I relax and I just release and flow, there's possibility lying in wait in those open hands. There's invitation, there's opportunity. And this is part of what we discover through leaning into the discomfort. Because when I'm locked up like this, it's uncomfortable, but it's easy to also feel comfortable in it. Like, I don't have to do anything. I'm just here in this time and space. Can't go anywhere, can't do anything, but hey, I can justify that. I can come up with all kinds of reasons why that won't work. But when I really relax, open, and flow, there we go. Suddenly that resistance flows away. I'm not attached to this. Instead, I welcome the flow. Space and time is a flow. We're in tune with space and time every single day, and we don't need calendars and clock time to tell us that. There is a moment in time at night where you just know it's time to go to bed. You're in that rhythm. And when you go into dream time and you connect with the improbable probabilities that exist outside of linear space and time, and then come out the next day awake, refreshed, creative, imaginative, ready to embrace the world. And note, I said embrace instead of take on the world, because how often are we told to take on the world? Do I want to take on the world? I want to embrace the world. I want to welcome the world. The world has gifts for me. I may not like all the gifts, but that's on me. That has more to do with my resistance than it has to do with the world. So I go and I embrace the world. Here is the world today. Here is the imagination and creativity that comes spilling out from me. And what I like to do each day, and I think this is essential, is I like to waken the body up and let the mind and the spirit follow. Because it's really easy to get up, get on that computer, start looking at that screen. And what are you doing? Right then and boom, right there, you are putting yourself into a screen. There's space, there's time. Locked in. Linear reality. What if I were to get curious about my body? Get curious about the movements. Stretch into awakeness and awareness. Relax and unlimber more fully. And take care of myself in some specific ways. Create a healthy breakfast. And then saunter over. And yes, turn on the computer or whatever it is and start exploring the world. Because I've already woken myself up and I'm fully present and aware, and I'm not necessarily locked in here. I like to encourage organic flow with space and time because it's very easy to get into calendar time. It's very easy to get into clock time. It's very easy to say, this is when things are occurring. Yeah, and this is when things are occurring. But when we invite ourselves into containers that unlock space and time, how refreshing it is. One of the best experiences that I've had, and it's really been in the course of this 4 months, is going through 6 initiatory experiences where each time I turned off my phone in the course of a few days. And I think the most refreshing aspect of that experience was letting go of the stress and worry of paying attention to time and just being in a space and a time that had no defined outcome. It wasn't about where I was getting to. It was about being where I already was and opening myself up to the fullness and richness of that container and allowing it to flow through me and unlock all those possibilities that were waiting. And I didn't know what the outcome was necessarily going to be. In linear space and time, what is the most important thing? It's the outcome, it's the result. I mean, this shows up in magical practices a lot. Well, what's the result you want to manifest? And sometimes I like to throw into there, what's the impact of that result? What are the consequences? Because there's always impact and there's always consequences, right? We look at it from a linear perspective. Things ripple outward. I toss a stone into a river, and there's going to be a ripple. I may not fully understand everything that comes out of that ripple. In fact, chances are I won't. But if we are willing to let go of the outcome and instead step into the fullness and presence of a non-linear experience of space and time, all the outcomes are already there. They may not make sense. They may not be exactly what we thought. And yet, they invite us to get curious. The saying that I have, which I think applies here, is to challenge what you know to discover what you can learn. And I talked about that a little bit earlier, but I'll say it again because if you take one thing away from this talk today, That's the thing I would want you to take away. I mean, I'll drop other pearls of wisdom throughout, but if you take one pearl of wisdom away, take that one away. Because it's so easy to get caught up in what we know, to get caught up in story. And story is really seductive. Story creates all kinds of rationalizations, creates all kinds of justifications. And I'm guilty of it myself. I tell story every day. Sometimes I tell it to other people, sometimes I tell it to myself, and I have to catch myself and say, wait a minute, what's the story here? What am I really telling myself? How much am I actually holding myself back from the fullness and the richness of reality? Because I'm caught up in story. I'm caught up in preconceived ideas. Challenge what you know to discover what you can learn. If I challenge what I know to discover what I can learn about space and about time, one of the things I would suggest is that space and time, which have been conflated by physics as to one thing, the space-time continuum. Well, what about, let's separate those out for a moment. What is space? What does it mean to be in a space? I love to create spaces that feel organic and alive, that have presence. I look, for example, at the spaces that I see through these screens, Drasmine's and Anika's space, and I see very alive spaces. I see lights. I see colorful backgrounds. I see presence. There's something rich about that. And then I look at the space that is Anika and the space that is Drasmine. Yes, they're both people. I want to be very clear about that, but they are also spaces. They are spaces. And there is a uniqueness that comes into each of those spaces that contains possibilities. I'm a space too. We're not space holders. Like, how often have we said, I'm going to hold space? I'm space holders. It's interesting because when we're talking about holding space, we're actually keeping ourselves outside of that space. If I'm holding space, am I in that space? No. What about being in space? Leaning in to the space, leaning into the experience. It's a very Saturnian idea, actually. I do a lot of work with Saturn as a planetary energy. Saturn's about boundaries and limits, but the interesting thing that a lot of people associate Saturn with a malefic force, and I don't really see Saturn as that. I see and understand and appreciate Saturn as just being very clear about what boundaries and limits are and being able to separate the chaff from the wheat, and at the same time opening doors of probability, because there is behind the curtain, within the boundaries, within the container, here's what you can do. You can go here, you can go there, you can do this, you can do that. There's actually a lot more possibilities available to us within a given space than we give ourselves credit for. But if I'm holding the space, if I'm outside of the space holding it in, I'm not present with all those possibilities and probabilities. I'm not present with anyone or anything. I'm just holding the space. Now let's consider time. On one hand, time is an arbitrary unit of measurement. Seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks. Like, this is a very convenient categorization that says, at this specific time, this is what the time is. The very human-made categorization. And of course, one could say, but Taylor, I notice that the sun goes down and the night appears, and I notice when the sun rises. And I would say, yes, the sun rises, the sun goes down, or at least the earth moves through space, creating that illusion of it anyway, right? And it's a very easy and arbitrary way of defining the passage of that. It has nothing to do. That saying it's each day is a new day. Well, that's true. Like here we are, but really we're tapping into the rhythms of the movement of the earth. There's some very convenient illusions that we hold on to with time. And, you know, there's seasonal changes. Okay, so yeah, right now up here in the northern hemisphere, it's cold. It's gray. It might be snowy wherever you are. It might not be. A few months from now, it'll change. And we're about to go into the longest night. We're about to go into the longest night, and we're going to emerge out the other side, bringing with us the flickering light as we move forth back into the cycle of the year. But someday there may be no humans that are on this planet. Maybe. We'll see. And if there aren't, will time still exist? As I said, that each of us is our own unique space, each of us is our own unique time. There's physiological cycles, for example, that each of us experience and inhabit. My cycle is different from yours. And those cycles inform and create the physiological response to the world around us, to the space that we're in, to the experience, the environmental experiences that we have. But is that time? Or is that simply presence? So I look at time being an arbitrary experience as I can, at least the linear aspects of time, I can let that go and I can invite myself into nonlinear time. And nonlinear time has a lot more to do with the appreciation of cycles and patterns and spirals. It's not a line, it's other things. So, okay, we're going to have a new moon on the 30th, right? So new moon up here. I even conveniently enough have my finger with the moon right there. New moon up here. New moon down here, new moon down here, new moon down here. What do we have? We have a spiral of new moons. You know what threads that spiral together? If we're doing a new moon working, it's you. Your identity creates a compression of those new moons into a singular moment. And you do your magical working and you combine that space and that time into a singular moment, because you are present across every single moment that you've done a new moon working. You are a point of identity. The new moon itself is a point of identity as well. It's a point of experience. There could be other vectors as well. And then you finish up your magical working and you expand, and all of a sudden you have new moon here, new moon here, new moon here, new moon here, across space and across time. You have singular instances of the new moon. But what magic does is it combines all the instances of a spiral and it creates a compression. And then when we release, we expand. And that's where what ends up happening is we have a contraction of space and time into a singular moment where we're just here. And we're creating our magic, brewing our medicine, doing what we want to do to shape things in certain ways. And then we expand outward into the universe around us. And we meet the universe, we lean into the edge, and our desired probability starts to become a new reality. And there are ripples because we're like a stone flowing into water. And those ripples go outward and carry outward into the world around us. And then they come back together at some point and offer new opportunities and identities to explore. We're moving through those all the time, but we're also expanding and contracting. We're expanding into the probabilities, and we're contracting in singular moments so that we can actually meet and expand. That's what space-time magic is about, but it's also the lived experience of life. Right now, we're in this particular summit, and this is both a contraction and expansion. It's a contraction because you had those 5 days of classes and people speaking and sharing their wisdom, and then it's an expansion of all the people that are touched by that and how that will just spread outward into the world around. And there will be changes that none of us may even know about ever because of that. And there will be changes that'll be obvious. When we invite in that kind of awareness, we are stepping outside of linear time and space, which says it has to be a certain way. Well, it could be many different ways. It could be many different possibilities. The more attached I get to a specific way or state of being or to a specific outcome, the less I am able to shift and be aware of all the possibilities and probabilities that are available that could change things in better ways. Maybe not so good ways. We can't predict it all, but that's where the risk comes into play. And that is the joy of life, in my experience. The joy and sorrow of life. We have our moments of bliss and joy, and we have our moments of sorrow and grief, and they all nonetheless keep us going. We are alive. We're going through and we're moving through them and transforming our lives. And sometimes we even contradictorily hold them all at the same time and then expand outward. So let's talk about methodology here. This all sounds great, this philosophizing, but how do we do this? I've already given you one clue, which is to find specific moments and create repetition. I call this iterative magic. Iterative magic is where you do a magical working repetitiously, again and again and again. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. Every time I do new moon working, it's not exactly the same, but there are things that are similar. I'm in a state of similarity. The new moon itself is in a state of similarity. The purposes that I may be working with are in a state of similarities, and yet there are differences as well. I'm in a different moment of space and time. I'm contracting all of those moments in, and yet I'm also at a different place. I'm not the person I was a month ago when I did that new moon working last. I'm someone else. I'm someone else. So if we consider that, what we can do is we can still say, I can still find the elements of similarity and thread them through the spiral. Contract the spiral and then expand it outwards and create the new possibility. And we can do this through repetitious magical workings. Now, I do a daily work for that, for example, every day. So, continue doing that every single day, creating a very specific space and time. And that space and time encapsulates everything else that occurs. It creates a container of what is included, and then it directs what is not included in the world around me in order to help shape the new reality that I'm operating in. Reality where I'm going to drink a green drink here in a moment. Here's to your health. Now, another clue that I gave you was sound and silence. I like to use sound and silence in my magical workings a lot. There's something very essential about holding the threshold between sound and silence. That moment when sound ends and silence begins, or when silence ends and sound begins, offers perspective. I would invite you to spend the next week or so, or at least a day if you can, getting curious about sound and silence. Where does the sound show up in your life? Where does the silence show up? What is the confluence there between the two? What does it offer you? And pay attention to how your awareness expands into both the sound and the silence. Something I find, I'll admit, curious is how often, like, I'll go and I'll drive in my car, and a lot of times I don't have the radio on. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But it's fascinating to me to drive a car without having sound on. There's still sound occurring, the running of the car, the sound of other cars, etc. We're never fully in a space where there's absolute silence. If we were, we would be in a vacuum. We probably wouldn't even be alive. Yet, we can allow ourselves to appreciate the absence of having to create noise. So that when we do make noise, we make it very purposely. And allow that noise, that sound, that vibration to resonate out into the world around us and help shape and craft a new reality. We can also do this through visual representation. Create art, create sigils, create symbols that speaks to what we want to represent. And the beauty of doing that kind of work is that it allows us to bypass the conscious mind and slip into the subconscious mind. I think there's a lot of truth to the idea that when you're trying to manifest something outwardly, or you're trying to connect with a spirit or do some other stuff, you are necessarily physiologically preparing yourself internally. You're creating a space in the internal reality that meets the external reality and folds them together. Like if I work with a spirit, for example, and I call the name of that spirit, I'm not just sounding out the name of the spirit. I'm vibrating my inner essence, and I'm connecting with the vibration of the spirit, and I'm folding them together in order to create an environment where the spirit and I can meet and collaborate and connect and create. And this is a very real aspect of magical work in general, whether you're working with spirits or not, that if you're going to invite something in, transform the inner reality. Prepare the space and the time of yourself to meet the space and time of where you want to be. And then go out and take action. The other thing about magic is that, and really I think about life in general, is that we have that moment where we compact everything together and we can stay in that space as long as we want to. But the problem is when we stay in that space, it starts to become a leaky container. Doesn't last. So I invite you instead to do your magical work and then expand and release and let it go outward, and then live it, embody it, be fully present with it. If I'm going to go out there into the world to manifest something new, what I'll start to find is that the necessary actions that I'm doing will line up with the events and the people and the places and the things. Things will start coming together. They might come together in ways I didn't expect, and in fact, more often than not, they do. And when they come together, it's divine timing, divine space. There's no sacred or profane. We have this tendency to define the sacred and the profane as separate things, right? So sacred action is ritual. It's incense, it's lighting candles, it's chanting, it's doing all the special things, right? But profane is, I got to go out there into the world and work at my job. I got to go outside and mow the lawn or rake the leaves or do something else. Well, what if we were to entertain the possibility that all of those actions could be as sacred as we want, and that the actions that we associate as sacred could be profane? It's the way you show up that makes something sacred or profane. And I prefer to live a magical, sacred life. So when I go out there, I rake my yard with love and care and connection to those fallen leaves and to the land itself. I'm honoring it, and I'm honoring myself in the fact that I'm in this collaborative space, this collaborative experience with those leaves, with the trees, with the lawn, with everything else, with the life that I don't even know is necessarily there on a conscious level, but it is there. It's all that life that's already there that's just waiting to be embraced. What's really profane is when we get caught up in our humanness to the point that we block everything else out around us. Right? I have a couple spiders in my house. And it's funny because people are like, well, why wouldn't you want to get rid of those spiders? Well, the spiders serve a function, and this is their home as well. Granted, I don't want like tons of spiders. I will carefully move them out into the world and invite them to go out there. But I do know they perform some very specific functions sometimes. They are there for a reason. And I may not understand that. And it's not even really about their function because it's about their life. They are just living their life in the fullness of their being. And I can either approach it from a human angle and be like, this is really inconvenient and I don't like the look of that thing. Or I can look at it from a sacred perspective and say, there is an experience here that I may not fully ever understand, but it has its place and its role. And it intersects with where I'm at. And there's a collaboration here if I'm open to it. Of course, this doesn't mean that you necessarily tolerate something that's dangerous in your environment. Like, you know, if there's a black widow spider in your environment, probably best to take care of that. You don't want to necessarily go and die. But even there, be curious. How did that happen? What occurred here? And can I honor the life of that spider that is dangerous for me while also honoring my own life? There are many different ways to explore these things. And this is why can be so good to do it. So if we look at space and time, we have different techniques. We have different possibilities. I can work with the spirit. I have above me, you won't be able to see it here. Actually, I'll just put it above. Let's see here. There you go. There's my painting to Prasan on my ceiling. Prasan's a goetic spirit of space and time and vibration. It's always there, inspiring my work. Right above my head. I know a lot of people don't put art on their ceilings, but I think, why not? It's beautiful. It's amazing. It's creating a sacred space and time in ways that we wouldn't expect. So we can work with spirits. We can use sigils. We can burn candles. We can work with mirrors. We can do all kinds of stuff. And what I really want to invite you to do is, I'm assuming that all of you that are watching this, or most of you watching this, have a pretty good idea of how to use those kinds of instruments and tools. And that if you don't, that you have access to somebody who can teach you that, or books or whatever else. But what I want to really invite you to do is to fully lean into the reality of space and time as you experience it every day, and then ask yourself how it could be different, and start opening yourself up to that. And one of the best ways that I can recommend doing that is to take the energy and the experience that you're having around a specific space-time event and start asking yourself, how many times has this pattern repeated itself in my life? What can I let go of if you don't like it? And what can I embrace if you do like it, without holding on to it so tight that you limit yourself? Because the real magic of space and time is found in our openness, in our curiosity. What am I willing to discover? What am I willing to explore? What am I willing to stretch into? Right? Like I just saw that wonderful stretch that Jasmine did. There you go. Like, what am I willing to stretch into? Literally, physically. Yeah, there you go. Do you notice how paying attention to the environment can be so key? What's going on around you? What's going on within you? Where do you want to go? Who do you want to be? These are all important questions. And yet I would invite you to also appreciate the sacredness of your experience. Appreciate not the process, the journey. Because process is such a functional thing. Here's the process: step A, step B, step C, step D. I have a book called The Process of Magic, and it's great. It outlines like how magic works, right? Here's what you do to get to here. Here's all the things you can do. But there's also something to be said for just journeying into the experience. The more I journey into the experience, the more I open myself to the actual experience and embody it, the better able I am to discover those seeds of quantum potentiality that are already existent. And then I can start cultivating them and nourishing them. And I can do that a number of different ways. I can journal about them. I can create art around them. I can do a ritual. I can play with a bell or a drum or do other things. And all of those things are relevant and powerful and valid. And most of all, I can get curious. Curious about this journey. And let go of the attachment to outcome. Because outcome is great right up until it stops us from being able to experience and discover what else is around us. So curiosity is the flavor of space-time magic. What do you want to get curious about in regards to your own journey? You know, I like to say, if I could wave a magic wand and give you everything you wanted, what would you have? And somebody will say something that seems impossible. And then what I'll say to them is, well, if you know that that's what you want, you already have taken the first step. So now what else do you need to do to step through time and space to get there? Do you have the willingness and commitment to get there? And if the answer is yes, then you'll find a way. There's that saying, where there's a will, there's a way. Maybe where there's a will, there's an A. Yeah. I invite you to open yourself to that. In fact, here's a little exercise we can do right now. On a piece of paper, I want you to write down something that you really, truly want, the depths of your being. Just take a moment, close your eyes, connect with your inner self. What do you want? And let me be clear, there's no right or wrong answer here. When you know what you want, write it on a piece of paper. That act of writing is an act of manifestation. You're externalizing it. You're moving it from up here in the head to out there. It's become an objective reality now. How do you know it's an objective reality? Because every time you look at that piece of paper, what's looking back at you? Oh, that thing I wanted. You've turned it into a form of manifestation. And you might say, but Taylor, that's just writing on a piece of paper. And my answer to you would be, that is the first step. You've owned what you want. Now what will you do to take it and manifest it and create it. You've written it on a piece of paper. You've made it into a reality. Now turn it into even more of a reality. And that reality could take many different forms, many different shapes. But it happens. I'll use an example. My theme for 2024 was confidence. If you had met me in January of 2024, you would not have met a very confident person. I wasn't in a good relationship. I was working at a job I didn't like. I was feeling really bogged down and crushed by a lot of different things. And I was doing my work. I was going to my men's circles every other week. I was showing up and staffing at events and doing some stuff, but I was still not feeling it. But I knew that's what I wanted. I wanted to be confident. I couldn't have told you in January of last year how I was going to get to where I'm at right now with confidence, because I didn't know. We're addicted to knowing. Because we think that if we know, we'll have control. But you know what? Knowing doesn't give us control. Knowing limits us. It blinds us. So how did I get here? I could tell you a story, but really how I got here is that I became curious about what it meant to be confident, and I was willing to explore and commit myself to how confidence would show up in my life in a myriad of different ways. And I followed all of those ways until here I am. It's December of 2024. And my theme for next year is leadership. Leader. Well, how will I get there? I've already taken some steps. I wrote that theme out. I started going, and I've attended a few events and things like that, and I have some other things. But still, a year from now, the person I will be will look back and say, I don't know how. We'll say, like, I had no idea that this is the person I would end up being. But here I am, because I'm willing to challenge everything that I know about myself and everything I know about the world around me. All the limiting messages, the narratives, the stories. So I can discover what else is there. So take that word, that whatever it is that you wrote, and don't worry about like what you have to do to control it. Instead, open yourself up to it. Open yourself to the tenderness and the ferocity, the grace, and the clumsiness. Because it's all there. There's going to be moments, as there always are, where you're going to fall or fail or take a tumble or discover a shadow about yourself. You thought you had it all together. You thought you knew it all. Oh, there comes shadow. And it trips you up. And there will be moments of grace and gold and joy when you've learned from that shadow. You've learned from your failures. You've learned from everything else. I mean, if I look back at this last year, I can point to you a number of different moments where I didn't feel very confident. But it was in not feeling confident and being open to leaning into the discomfort and getting curious about it that I created a new space and time where I could become confident. So what is it that you want? Whatever it is that you want, are you willing to be curious about it? Are you willing to let go of your preconceptions of it? Are you willing to embrace and discover the joy of it? There's joy. And there's sorrow. And there's everything in between. And it's like kind of like this little beaded necklace or bracelet right here. It's a possibility. And I can slip it on and it becomes something else. I can take it off, it becomes something else. And I can play with it as a little mandala here. Or not a mandala, but a a bracelet of sorts that I'm flicking in my hands, using it as a meditative process. I can do lots of different things with it. And the more I get curious about it, instead of getting attached to what I know about it, the more the possibilities will open and the doors of space and time will unfold and create this organic openness and presence that allows you to become what you are looking for. Let's take a deep breath into that. Breathe in again, and I invite you, as you breathe in, to breathe in everything you think you know about whatever it is that you wrote down. And then breathe it out with a sound. Let go of what you know. In between what you know and what you can learn is that opening of space and time. There's all your probabilities right there. And go forth on your journey.
Wow, Taylor, that was so good. I had to take so many notes. I have so many questions. Thank you for that expansive insight into time and space. It's definitely expanding me now and making me think. So I'm excited to deepen my own practices of time magic. I haven't dabbled as much into space, and yet as you were speaking, it was like, well, they go hand in hand. And I'd not considered that until you shared. And so it's making me look at what I have done from a different lens, and I appreciate that opportunity for growth. What about you, Lady Anika? Any insight into Taylor before I bombard him with all my questions?
My Gemini mind is buzzing. Like I could sit and listen like a little kid sitting at God's stool, like just share. Thank you. Go ahead with your questions. I have some of my own.
Yeah. So the first thing I just wanted to point out and really like bring back, because you shared this at the beginning of your talk, was you talked about how the arrow of time and the presence of space. Mm-hmm. And how we can access the arrow of time and sound in the presence of space and silence. And I appreciate that image to create. And I love how you continue to come back to the importance and power of holding silence and cultivating that within our life. You know, I am also a being who loves going on long drives and won't listen to the radio, or I'll just work and I just won't have any music on. And people find that very jarring and disruptive. They're like, but how do you think? I'm like, how do you think with all that extra clutter around you is my question. You know, how can you listen to the possibilities, the infinite possibilities that exist within the void, within that space of creation, if you're constantly surrounded by noise?
Mm-hmm.
It's true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, you know, I will spend a lot of times when I'm working, I won't have music on. Sometimes I do. Like when I want to create a flow state, like if I'm writing, that's a great time when I'll listen to music. But I won't listen to music with vocals.
Right.
Because I don't want their words getting into my words. So I will listen to something that is just that just is pure sound. It might have a theme to it, but it's still sound, and I'm able to get into it. But other than that, yeah. And I think it's really good to take a break from sounds as much as possible, because a lot of times we're addicted to sound as a way to fill up that space and the silence that comes with it. And that, again, goes back into that comfortable discomfort, where I want to invite people to lean into mutuality with that discomfort of the silence, because there's gold there for you.
Yeah. And
I
even sound like tones, right? Like binaural beats, it's still a sound. It's still a frequency that is being added to. And so I just want to point that out for our listeners that when we're talking sound, we're not just talking about music. We're also talking about tones and frequencies because our body needs to recalibrate. So my question, or rather what I would love for you to expand on, is you said the very first practice is find moments and create repetition. Now, were you talking about like our daily habits and routine, or were you talking specifically about moments for higher practice, or both?
All of the above. Because like brushing your teeth is something you do every day. You do it multiple times a day. Well, what a great time to clean yourself. I'm brushing my teeth. I'm brushing my mouth. I'm brushing my thoughts. I'm brushing my emotions. Right? As opposed to just, I'm doing this as quickly as I can because I got other things to do. You know, brushing your teeth is an invitation to connect with yourself, to connect with your teeth in your mouth, but also with everything else.
Thank
And
you.
and it can also be like, you know, I'm going to do a new moon ritual, full moon ritual, or I'm going to do something at a specific time of day. And that also can be its own thing. But the interesting thing is, how often do we just associate that kind of experience with, oh, it's new moon, it's time to do a ritual? Well, why couldn't brushing your teeth be a ritual as well?
Yeah. It makes me think of a phrase a friend shared recently, the magic of the mundane. And that's what you're basically saying. It's like, can you see that the quote unquote mundane tasks are moments to really deepen in that awareness of the time space that we occupy?
Mm-hmm. And it looks like Aniko went away. Oh, now you're back.
Yeah, I got kids. I had to yell at them a minute. I absolutely love it. It's I love how you tie it in with just really thinking about what you're doing in the present moment of time and space, and how they really do, like, what are they and how they shift and how they can create and how they can be still, and in between the sound and the silence and in between that space. I'd like to share a little bit about that on my own journey. I've been asked, it's been 3 or 4 consecutive years, 3 for sure, that I was guided to sit in complete darkness for 3 days, right around this time of year, in fact. And I remember my first time detoxing from sound, phone, food, everything, sitting in complete darkness, closing my curtains and sitting in my room in darkness. It was very, very difficult. And leaning into that uncomfort, it was, we do get addicted to sound, dopamine, attention, connection, food, and we reach for those things in comfort within ourselves, keeping ourselves consuming and reaching for the next thing rather than sitting in this space of creation. So my question is, how would you guide people towards really leaning into that? Do you have any tools or tricks to help them through that discomfort of that need for dopamine or that need for connection or food or words? Like, what is that? Do you have any tools in that?
I do. Like you, I've done endarkenment practices, so I think that that's a great tool right there. You know, there's something really powerful about just turning everything off and giving yourself that space to be present with everything that's going on in here. Cultivate that. When I talk about leaning into discomfort, what I like to do is, when I'm in a situation where there's discomfort coming up, is to really be present with it and not tell myself stories about it. Because if I'm starting to tell stories about it, what am I really doing? I'm trying to rationalize it. I'm being defensive. I am trying to I'm limiting myself in some form or manner. And I'll admit fully and freely, I'm not always good at that. Sometimes I do end up telling stories, and I take responsibility for that because I think it's a reality. We all do. And I think acknowledging that is a crucial step, actually leaning into discomfort. When you catch yourself telling that story, okay, I'm telling a story here.
Mm-hmm.
When I can get out of story, how do I get out of it? Really be with the experience without being attached to the experience. The experience is not me.
Mm.
The experience is something happening with me. There's a lesson here, perhaps. There's some kind of offering. It may not be exactly what you want, and that's okay. But that's where suffering comes into play, right? Like, okay, there's something happening to me here that I don't want to have happen. That's where resistance comes into play, and that creates suffering. I'm holding on to that. And there's a very real difference between pain and suffering, I think. Like, let's say I stub my toe. It hurts. Ouch. It's not fun. But it's a momentary experience. You know, I'll take care of that toe. I'll be okay. But if I hold on to that feeling of the pain, that's when it becomes suffering. I'm thinking about how much I stubbed my toe, how much it hurt, and I'm holding on to it. That's where I'm caught up in suffering. So when I talk about leaning into discomfort, lean into the experience as it's happening and let go of the suffering. The suffering is part of the story that we tell ourselves. It's, you know, and again, it's something where like I will fully admit I have to learn that lesson every single day. And I'm okay with that because that's part of the joy of life. Maybe someday I'll get really good at it and I won't have to, but you know, I'm going to just keep leaning into it. Every single time I lean into the discomfort instead of avoiding it, that's where the expansion of space and time comes in. And every time I don't lean into it, every time I'm like pulling back, what am I creating? I'm creating separation.
Beautiful. Dr. Sereno also talked about stubbing your toe, but you brought it into a different context. He was looking at the pain of things and how it affects your body. You really brought it into a context of if you're holding on to that pain, that's where the traumatization happens. And thank you for bringing that in context for the quantum leaping day, because really that's kind of the roots of it, right? That's the roots of healing versus keeping ourselves in a space of suffering. So thank you so much. Go ahead, Lady Jasmine.
Yeah, it's really, I was just chuckling too that the two men speakers that we had just talked about stubbing toes. I'm like, is this like a thing that happens a lot more in the masculine world? Because like I don't really experience stubbed toes, but
I don't really experience stubbed toes often either. Maybe it was just synchronicity. This is space and time working right here.
We're just looping. But I do have a paralleling question going off that thread. You know, how, you know, one of the things that's so important when we are cultivating higher magic, when we're really anchoring on the higher timeline is consistency, right? You talk about consistency. But what if someone has quote unquote insomnia and they're really challenged with that, right? What advice would you have for someone who's really challenged with anchoring consistency and creating repetition because they're still working through that fracture in the nervous system and haven't cultivated those healthy sleep habits yet?
One, I would recommend that maybe they explore that from an organic perspective. Schedules are inorganic, very functional. And I'm not saying that they don't have a purpose, they do. But if you're in insomnia, there's probably stuff going on there that you're trying to push down. And it may need to be experienced and expressed. The other thing that I would recommend is getting curious about what your body is trying to tell you and making friends with melatonin, which is a neurotransmitter that may help with sleep, and serotonin as well, like finding a balance there. I have a great book called Inner Alchemy of Life where explore how to make friends with your body, make friends with the neurotransmitters and the hormones and the bacteria and stuff like that. And that might be helpful as well. And usually when I find myself in a state of insomnia, what I do is I get up and I do some stuff for a while. And just be present and experience and accept that that's where I'm at that moment. And I get curious at the same time, like what's really going on? Is there a reason I'm feeling insomnia? And usually there is. Usually that insomnia is really a signal from my body saying there's something keeping you up here that hasn't been addressed. Maybe I need to have a conversation with somebody. Maybe I need to have a conversation with myself. Maybe I need to do something else. Whatever it is that I need to do, I can't know that until I lean into it and get curious about it. And I don't think that we can have healing, we'll say, of the nervous system. You know, if there's been trauma there, I don't think we can have that until we get curious about it. That's hard because we're all carrying trauma in our bodies. We're carrying our own trauma from experiences that we've had, and we're carrying the ancestral trauma that's come before us. And getting curious about that can be really rough and tough at times. And it can also be releasing. I recently wrapped up a series of initiations where what I ultimately did is I melted the ice in my heart. It's really powerful. And a couple weekends ago, I wrapped that particular journey up. And I think what I found most fascinating is that in being able to let go of the trauma that was really contained within that ice, I discovered that I was feeling so much more in my body and in my presence and awareness than I had ever felt before. I'm still getting used to it. It's an interesting place because by being able to lean into that trauma, into that experience, as hard as it was, and it was hard, I was also able to invite myself to change, because the interesting thing is that when I didn't lean into it, I was holding on to story and I was actually creating separation from myself. And by creating that separation from myself, I could not be fully present and could not find the healing I needed, even though I wanted it, because I got looped into the story. So if I look at that case with insomnia, if I was experiencing insomnia, I would get curious. What's the story here? Mm-hmm. And what can I do to lean into that story and dissolve it and melt it? Mm-hmm. Be with it. And again, I'm not going to pretend that that's easy. And that may require some work with a professional, like someone who's trauma informed or something along those lines. And if you start to encounter that, that's where I would, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, I got to pull back. Okay. Gentle, take a deep breath, connect with somebody, and then get the access to those resources. That's what you need to do. And no shame there, no judgment, right? We are all where we are at because that's where we're capable of being. I think that is one of the most important things that could ever be said. Appreciate the capability of where you're at. The fact that you're here is a miracle and an accomplishment in and of itself. So does that answer that question around insomnia?
It does. It does. And I love that you bring that piece of curiosity in, because that is also the big key that I shared in my talk earlier today around like how we sustain the thriving timeline that we tap into. You know, something I have learned through my work with money is if we cannot hold the frequency, then we're not going to be able to grow and amplify. Why would we get $1,000 if we can't even hold on to $100? You know, why would we get $100,000 if we can't even hold on to $1,000? I mean, we see this with people who win the lottery all the time, right? Like they win this money, but then it's gone. Why? Because they haven't learned how to sustain that. And that curiosity, you know, is again that restoration of the innocence from the lens of maturation and the union of the sacred in the mundane. And so, yes, the curiosity, again, people like get curious, right? Get like movement. What did you say? Your sensual is a form of movement. And I shared a sensual practice earlier this week of how to tap into the sensual body of like soft, slow movements. And I shared multiple practices this week on activating different parts of the body through movement. So yes, thank you. That does answer the question and further hammers the point home of get curious people. Get your crayons out, get your trowel out, get your makeup out. Doesn't matter if you're a man. Nobody's going to see your lipstick unless you post it on social media. Get silly.
That's right. Get silly. Have fun.
Love that. I would like to ask another question,
Okay.
especially before we bring it to a close and we open the floor for other questions. What is one of the biggest quantum shifts that you've created for yourself through your practices? And can you share a practice that you use regularly?
So I can. I do what's called the sphere of art each day. It's a magical practice where I call in the directions and the archangels and the deities and but of the directions, but also space and time, past, future, presence, the underworld, and the stellar cosmos, calling it all together. And I do that practice every single day. That is a really powerful, repetitious form of iterative magic that I do. It grounds me. I meditate in it. And I'm not necessarily even doing like active magic, but when I do other magic throughout the day, it actually feeds into that when I do magical work. I don't do a lot of active magical work anymore because I found that the secret sauce with magic is being able to do long-term work where it's transformative and then you allow it to fully expand out. And I'll share an example of that, which to answer your question. So at the end of August, I left my job and I was going to go into graduate school to get a degree in counseling, but I didn't really want to do it. I had used it as an excuse to leave that job. It was an excuse. It was a rationalization to myself. It was a story. Like, if I do this, then I can leave the job. It was a bargaining chip. I didn't like the job. I had gotten out of the relationship I was in that wasn't good for me. And I wasn't relieved or happy when I left that job. I was exhausted. I slept the first few days. Like, I was just that tired. And I'm glad I did. That was good, And I was feeling a lot of fear at the time. So I drive to the ocean. I take a statue of Eros and Aphrodite with me. I take a ring I'd had that I'd been given that was from that relationship. I didn't want it anymore, but I still had it. And I took 2 arrows with me to represent, those arrows of time, but also Eros in a way. I go out to the beach and I find a dune and I plan everything down, get my statues here, and I take the arrows in my hand. I call in the directions, call in the archangels, call in the gods, call in the sphere, call in Eros and Aphrodite, call in the new moon during broad daylight, because you know what? The moon is up there all the time anyway. We can do a new moon ritual during the day. Thank you very much. I don't have to do it at night. I called in the sun. I have everything there. And I call in Eros and Aphrodite, and they're like, all right, we're here. What do you want? What do you want to do with the rest of your life? You've just left this job. What do you really want to do? They're calling me out. Okay. Well, I want to do magical work the rest of my life. I want to continue to serve my magical community. I'm a writer. I've written lots of books, I teach classes, all that stuff. Okay, great. You're going to do that. What else? You got this other arrow. There's something else here. Well, I want to serve the men's community. I want to do men's work. I want to continue to expand and grow into this. Okay. Put those arrows into the ground. And they look at me and they're like, well, buckle up. You're in for an interesting ride. And, I go and then they're like, all right, take the offering of the ring and you're going to give it to the ocean. We're going to give it to the earth and the ocean. That's what I did. I walked out to the ocean and I tossed that ring in. And, that was my offering to the sea, of the mother, and the land and the earth, and also to the father sky, but also to Eros and Aphrodite. And I come back and I release that energy. And then the next couple of days, I dropped out of graduate school because I realized I didn't want to do it. There was so much resistance there. I'm like, this isn't the right fit. I don't know what it is. And I let go of everything I knew to discover what I could learn. It was a scary time. That first month in particular, I had to tell myself multiple times, like, you're going to figure this out. You've got this. I don't know what the answer is. But it was interesting because the more I got curious and leaned into that discomfort, the more things came into coherence. I had someone who offered me up a free coaching session because she'd taken a class with me. And so I was like, all right, I'll go do that. And then she ended up offering another session, and we did some work around that, and that brought clarity. I went to an event. It was an event where there were 200 men, 200 women doing their work. And it was during the equinox. I didn't do any magic then. Normally I would have. That event itself was magic enough. And a lesson there was that this is a great example of, I did this magical working at the beginning of September. I did not do any major magical work until Samhain. I just let that magic ripple outward. I trusted it. I let go of the need to try and do something, to try and control, and just open myself up. And the more I opened myself up, the more the experiences and people and things came into play that I needed to move me forward in my life. So I think that's really a great example of that. When we let go of story, we let go of all the things that we think we need to control, everything will show up. And what I realized too is, it's like, I'm going to own the fact that I'm a really talented manifester. And part of me being able to manifest is getting curious. I need to be organic about this. Look at my manifestation map. I need to be organic and curious, because those are my strengths. And when I rely upon that, it gets me where I'm going. And it did.
I love that. Thank you. I love how you shared how uncomfortable it was. And I'd like to touch on that for all of us here and those in the replay. Like, that is like a huge key. I just did a talk on this in the last summit I was in about the seven laws of shifting. And that one pivotal point is getting uncomfortable and talking yourself through those spaces of shift, because your identity is shifting. Your consciousness is shifting. Everything is shifting into what you truly want. But there is so much discomfort because you're no longer comfortable in what you were. So thank you for sharing that. And I think you touched on some of that in your talk. And I think that's very, very, very beautiful. And let me see if we have any more questions. I think you shared some of your tools. I think it's beautiful. Let's open the floor for any more questions.
I wanted to thank you, Tyler, for sharing your perspective on time and space and their dual nature, both being separate and combined. It's a lot of what I learned when I was doing Reiki meditation, like for 3 hours a day when I started my training as a Reiki practitioner, was that silence and not really thinking about time in that silence, because it was about just going into myself, and so that was a really important piece that you spoke of. And I think it's important for everybody to be able to have that time and that ritual of being in that space and not being obsessed with time, right? Because a lot of people are obsessed with time. And so one of the things I really wanted to jump on is that your curiosity. Everybody here, we're all curious, and I have a card for that.
Love it.
So we need to have curiosity in our lives to grow, and I really appreciate you bringing that forward in such a powerful way in the masculine, because we as women are often just hearing from the feminist and women's perspective, and it's we're looking for that balance, right? And in that curiosity, to have that balance of the masculine energy coming in is really great. And so I'm going to put this on my wall, and I just really wanted to thank you for spending the time today to share what you have learned and believe and feel in your mind and body because you're embodying, and it is that embodiment that is truly magical. So you are the magic. Thank you.
I received that. Thank you.
Beautiful. What got you into space and time magic?
Well, I got into magic when I was 16 years old, and I started out with elemental hermeticism and neo-shamanic practices. And then I gradually got into other things. But what got me into space and time magic was, well, it's curiosity. I've always loved asking questions. And I don't have to have the answer. In fact, I don't really need the answer a lot of the time, because the answer is usually, it's again that place of knowing. Well, if I know something, I have control over it, right? But I like being curious for the sake of just exploring and having a sense of wonder and imagination and creativity. And that's what brought me to space-time magic, because I started, I was reading some books on magic, and there'd be little hints about it. There was nothing explicitly written about space-time magic at the time, as I recall. This was many years ago. And then I started exploring physics, and I started exploring some other ideas, and that's out of that came my first book, or one of my first books, Space-Time Magic, and then I've continued writing a few. I've written a couple other books in that series. I've written a lot of books on magic in general, and what I've continued to find, and this is kind of the thing, is that I'm continuing to explore space and time even now. Like, I don't have all the answers. I have a bunch of books up on that top shelf that are about time that I even haven't gotten to yet. I'm actually, one of my next books that I'm going to write sometime in the next year or two is going to be a book about space, just about space. And then I'll do a book about time, because I think it's worthwhile to separate those out and then combine them together again. And, when we get curious about something like that, there are so many different angles and perspectives, like reading anthropological studies about time and looking at monochromatic time versus polychromatic time. So monochromatic time is like Western notions of time, like, okay, it's 3 o'clock and you're going to be here on time, ready to go, right? That's there. But then, there's the polychromatic version of time, where it's like, well, hey, we're going to get together and we're going to spend the next few days together, and we're going to kind of sort of have a container, but we're going to let the magic flow. One of my friends says, like, have just enough structure to allow for the magic, but allow the magic to flow and not have too much structure. And I think that that's a great example of polychromatic time. So, you have these anthropological ideas of time, or like with space. I finished reading a 4-book series that was called The Process of Life by this architect called Christopher Alexander. And what he was exploring was how to design spaces that felt alive, that captured the aliveness of the space and brought it forth. And captured isn't really the right word, but this is again language, the limitations of language, right? But it was about bringing out that organic experience of space. And this is one of the reasons why, like, for example, I have art on my ceilings, because I started thinking about that. Like, well, how do I design my space? Why am I designing it the way that people conventionally tell me I ought to design it? Why not design a space that feels alive and organic for me and welcomes in all the energies from all the different directions that I want to bring it in?
I love that. I also put art on my ceiling. I think it's exactly perfect. It is everywhere, and the eye of the beholder is very beautiful. When you were talking about the polychromatic space and time, I had a good giggle, because I think that was me and Drives Men scheduling out this summit. She's very down to the minute, and I'm like, girl, we just need a flow, and I'm like, we could do this together. I had to giggle. Yes.
These are my growing edges. We're supporting each other with our growing edges here, and I'm grateful.
Beautiful. You said that you have a lot of books and a lot of offerings. Where can the beautiful viewers and those on the replay, where can we find your medicine and your offerings and your magic?
If you want to, I have a couple different websites. If you visit magicalexperiments.com, you can find all my offerings around magic and spirituality and classes and books. And if you visit inneralchemycoach.com, you can find all my offerings as far as like men's work and the work that I'm doing there. And I also have a couple of Substacks. So I have mensmysteries.substack.com and taylorellwood.substack.com, where I share writings and podcasts and other things like that. So any of that appeals to you, you want to explore those things, please hop on over and visit.
Thank you. I do have one question, or rather something that I would love for you to elaborate on, because it just kind of went over my head. You were talking about how sometimes when we were talking about like mama manifestation, and I know, Lady Anika, that you're getting away from that word because we're done mama manifesting, now we're sustaining. But you were talking about like how sometimes things don't show up because we're focused right here. And then it got lost a little bit on like how to shift that frequency so that energy can flow. Can you just come back to that a little bit and then untangle that a moment?
Sure. So what I always like to look at when somebody is doing magical work or really just any kind of manifestation is, first off, let's take a moment and define the result. What is the result that we want? Now, defining the result doesn't mean that we're attached to the result. But I'm going to come back to that word attachment in a few moments to unravel this. Defining the result is just us getting very clear. This is what I want. Okay, here's what I want. And then we can work backwards from that to create our process. And our process could be any number of different things. It could be, we're gonna create a sigil. It could be we're gonna burn a candle. We're gonna work with a spirit. We're gonna do something else altogether. The process is, and we're gonna take some form of other actions that are quote unquote mundane, whatever that is around what we want. No, that's relevant. But what I find often gets in the way is when people are attached to the result. They're attached to the outcome. Because the tighter you cling to something that you're attached to, the more you're actually keeping it away from yourself. You're not allowing it to flow. So if I get attached to a very specific outcome and I'm not open to just allowing it to flow, it's going to hold me back from getting that outcome. But if I'm willing to let that go and just get curious without having to have a definitive answer, then pathways will open up. And again, I'm sharing this right now, and even as I'm sharing it, I'm like, oh yeah, Taylor, good idea. See, that's what you didn't do at X, Y, and Z. And I share that because I think it's so important to get in touch with the fallibility of our nature, right? Because we're going to do that. There's going to be so many times where we're dropping some pearl of wisdom, and then at the same time we're seeing, yeah, and here's the gap where I didn't follow through on that, right? And so I think that's really important to acknowledge that. Because when we can do that and laugh at ourselves, we're already starting to let go of that energy of attachment. Now I can get curious. Now I can discover what it is I need to do to open myself to that. So it's great. It's great to know what you want and don't get fixated on it. Because fixation keeps you away from it. With fixation, you're always putting it out over here. You're not becoming it. And so you're always trying to get toward it, but you're not getting toward it because you've made it separate. Whereas if I just go and I do what I need to do and I trust it and I let go, well, things just start to come together. And I may not always know, and there's a lot of uncertainty in not knowing, but that's the beauty of going and discovering, because that uncertainty is where we lean into the discomfort and start exploring and getting curious. Whereas that knowing, that's what keeps us in the box. That's what keeps us in that comfortable discomfort that says, well, I know everything I got here and I'm not really happy with it, but at least I know it. That feels safe. It's actually one of the unsafest spaces you could possibly be in.
I love that. I love that. And I just like to touch on that a little bit. It makes a lot of sense. It brought me a lot of confirmation for me. Lady Dresman mentioned that I don't use the word manifesting. And you mentioned sustaining, and I don't look at it as sustaining. I look at it as we are creating in this now moment. We're always creating. It's from thought to matter, from mass into matter, and it's coming through our vessel into a creation mode. It's like the God goddess creation in this now moment. And I think that really brought me into that space of what is that word I hear? Interesting. It really brings me into confirmation of manifesting is something out here. It's like doing the higher round magic, and it's doing all the energy work and doing all these things, but it's still kind of keeping us from receiving that because we're holding on to it out here rather than having it in this physical moment right here. I think that's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And the you said get curious. I like to call it the eyes of wonder. Through the much inner child integration I've cultivated, I like to share that with my clients as well. As if we connect to the eyes of wonder, we're still a child. We're still seeing through the eyes of creation, which is that space of creativity and that space of curiousness and seeing the magic in the fresh leaf or the fallen leaf. It's different every year, even if the tree is the same color. And I think that's very beautiful, really getting into what creation really is in this now moment. Thank you for that.
I received that. Thank you.
Yummy. It's been a pleasure. I could listen to you talk for a long time. I see us meeting again in the future. It was very, very, very beautiful having you here. And I have to say, the amount of books that have been suggested throughout this whole summit has been nothing less than miraculous. So to anybody that's looking for the next bit of knowledge, there is lots of shared in this last 5 days, and it's
And if somebody, I'm just going to put this out there, if somebody goes through all the replays and makes a list of all the books that were shared, I will give you a prize for your devotion and sifting through and helping everyone else find that list of books. So just putting that out there, optional prize if you feel like doing a little work. And that shows that if you're willing to do the work for this, you're willing to do the work for other things. So let's get curious.
I love that.
Love it.
Yes, I'm like challenge accepted.
Lady Anika, no, you do not qualify. You are going on a timeout off the social break.
Oh, look out. She's got her eyes on you. You better watch out.
Don't be teasing me now.
Like it. Like a little foreplay in that pineal.
Beautiful. I think that also opens up for the free or for the gift that we have to finish out this beautiful 5 days.
Yeah, we want to go there. We want to bring in.
Ready?
Are we ready? Okay,
yes, I'm so excited.
So we've had this Path of Awakening treasure map. Okay, for the last 4 days. Day 1 was alignment, was the key word, and the reflection question was, the healed version of me is or does blank. Day 2, the key word was empowerment. And the reflection question was, what pain have I turned into power and how? Day 3, the key word was breakthrough. And the reflection question was, I break the mental loops by choosing love in the action of blank. Day 4, yesterday, our keyword was illuminate. And the reflection question was, by regulating my nervous system with the action of blank, I illuminate and nourish my passion and purpose. And today, our keyword is amplify. And the reflection question is, I quantum shift my current reality by amplifying focus on blank. We would love to know the answer to your reflection question. And today, instead of giving a daily prize, we're giving away a grand prize to one of our sacred sovereigns who has really been showing up, who has been in communication with us behind the scenes, who has made efforts to be present and not make excuses because they know their worth, and they are choosing to anchor in this highest timeline for themselves, for their legacy. Lady Anika, would you like to reveal the winner of our grand prize? First of all, what our grand prize is and the winner.
Oh my God. So our grand prize has been in the making for since, well, not quite the gestation of the summit, but it has been in the making in the background for a long time. And beautiful Lady Jasmine and I have put in so much creative thought and expansion into the space. First off, it's a 22-day truly anchoring and activating and amplifying our dreams, our energy, and not just creating a quantum shift, but holding the quantum shift, holding our dreams, holding the next step, holding our vision, our change makers, the leaders, and stepping into that and doing it together, walking you through the whole process with foods, meditations, teachings. Plus, we also receive memberships for both Lady Jasmine and I of the different things that we share in our memberships, our groups, our healings, our coachings. They are all in this beautiful mix of stuff. Plus, we just get so excited. This just kind of happened. Well, it's a 22-day immersive. And Lady Jasmine and I were talking about the dates. And to finish this 22 days, it's going to end on the full parade alignment of planets on January 25th. So it's literally bringing the cosmos into physical freaking form to create change. And let me just say, when I last parade of planets was 4 years ago, and I am living that now. So I am so excited to have this prayer, this action, this motion, and the 22-day challenge in the midst of this awesomeness.
Yes.
It's epic. Go ahead, Lady Jasmine. Share more. Sorry, I got so
I know.
excited.
I love your excitement. And we had originally thoughts of like starting this 22-day challenge on Monday, but we really took some time to sit with ourselves, with our higher guides, to sit with the enormity of the summit. And there was like so much that happened. So we want to honor ourselves in this quantum timeline shift that we have just anchored in, and not do the crazy monkey spiral of go, hustle, hustle. We are in the holy days, y'all. It is a time for rest. It is a time for family. And this next week is a time of integration. So 2 things. 1, we are extending the VIP upgrade deal to January 3rd at 1 p.m. And so we are moving our VIP lounge to January 3rd at 1 p.m. This gives everyone a week to catch the replays, to answer the prompts, to consider joining us on this 22-day quantum shift power circle. And then we're going to come in on January 30th, Lady Anika and I, and we're going to ignite those 22 days together. We're going to hope to see most, if not all, of our speakers back here. We are inviting you to dress up as your highest self, as that version of you that is healed, whole, holy, that already is, that you are actively now working towards. And we're going to have that VIP lounge on December 30th. And then on that Friday of January 3rd, we start day 1 of the 22-day quantum shift power circle. And it will wrap up. Our closing ceremony for that will be on January 25th. And it just cosmically, magically aligned. We didn't really think this through, and then it just showed up, and we're like, oh, well, duh, of course, because we are aligned, like we talked about on day 1 of the summit earlier this week. So, now that I've shared those dates, drum roll, please. Who is the grand prize winner of our VIP upgrade? That also includes 1 free one-on-one session with Lady Anika and I separately, at your time and pleasure, within the next 3 months. 3 months? 2 months. 2 months, excuse me. Yeah, within the next 2 months, because we want to make sure you receive our one-on-one support while you're in this vortex.
Ooh, and that would help anchor in that 22 days. That would give another couple weeks for integration and then a full anchoring session. Oh, that's classic. How perfect. The universe is golden.
And it's right before the full shift of the zodiacal year. So we want to make sure that we completely seal in your sacred sovereign work in this old timeline. Because this coming new year, it's about mastery. Okay, 2025 adds up to the number 9. 9 is the number of self-mastery.
And breakthroughs.
And breakthroughs via expansion. I know Lady Anika is not a fan of the word sustaining, but I will use it. She will use co-creating. We are co-creating and sustaining together because we are all pieces of the greater whole, and we all have our magical words. If you don't like either word, don't let the word trip you up, honey. Come find out what your word is with us.
Drum roll. It's you, beautiful soul. You are here. You have been present with us all but one day. Beautiful Lyra. I am so excited to offer this to you. Lady Dresman and I were like, yes.
Such an obvious choice.
Yay! Thank you. I look forward to working with both of you ladies individually and together. And I think that this is the beginning of a really good opportunity and relationship to expand, because you were talking about amplification earlier. And I'm like, this is what we need. We need to amplify each other's unique quantum thread, because that's part of the greater tapestry. And so I'm grateful that I've been able to glean a lot of information during this time with you and all of the wonderful guest speakers. And I hope that we just are able to expand this whole quantum ripple into the together. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes. You. Well,
thank you for showing up and doing the stuff. We see you, we feel you, and it is exciting to help and be present and rise together.
So
exciting.
We completely missed our dance break for today. Do we feel like we want to do a little dance movement to seal all this in and celebrate good times? Come on, when a good time.
Do the dance, right?
Do the dance. Wait, before we do the dance, Lyra, I would love to hear, what are you going to be amplifying focus on, since you did bring that in?
Well, my amplifying focus is going to be mainly on the quantum workshops that I have that are for the soul sparks. So to ignite soul sparks everywhere through the amplification process of the workshops.
I love it. Love it.
It's stuck in there. I'm like, it's stuck in there. That is, I'm like, there's a reason for that. I heard dream bigger. I heard no more playing small. Workshops are just a small piece of a huge whole. And I heard that. And I'm like, ooh, let's hold that. No more playing small. Yes, the whole vision.
Oh my gosh, that's so wild, because I literally heard that in my meditation this rising. Woke up with this funk in the air, and I went to the gym and I did some EFT and repatterning while I was in the pool in the sauna. And that's what I heard. Amplify focus on the highest vision. Just focus on that highest timeline. Bills are paid. You got your own house. You got a brand new car. You've got soul aligned clients. I shared earlier in this week when we were talking about breaking the mental beliefs, like the thought that old demon that was coming back to me was like, who's gonna pay me? And now I've been working through that energy all week, and what I am now at is I acknowledge that my financial place is not easeful, and I am no longer on a timeline of poverty, scarcity, and lack. I have shifted fully into a timeline of Godfidence, luxurious ease, and money miracles. And I am aligned with soul-led, empowered clients who see my value and pay me big money with generous tips. I am doing my best, and all my bills are paid way in advance. That's where I'm at with that empowered rewrite. So that's what I'm working through right now. So I quantum shift my current reality by amplifying focus on luxurious ease.
Celebrate good times. Come on.
Where do you want to be? Make that picture so crystal clear in your mind. And, one of the practices I've done is even drawing it on a card that I put on a wall. And like looking at this year, the end of the year, what I've accomplished now, what am I looking forward to? Where am I projecting myself to be next year? And just drawing an image that's going to bring it to me through that law of attraction. So let's bring it in, right?
Yes, that's actually reminding me of a practice that a shaman shared with me years ago, and they said create a mandala using a single line. Start with a circle and then just let the pen and thing just like take you into it. And what kind of creation can you make from a single line until it breaks?
Right.
And then step back and meditate on that for 7 days. And I remember doing that practice, and it was extremely powerful. So thank you for that reminder, because I'm going to do that, especially now that we're in this vortex of the solstice energy. It's a very powerful time to sit with intention and co-creation with the divine. So thank you for that reminder of that wisdom through your son. You know, it's like so beautiful. The young and the old, it's same and different.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's what I was really gleaning from all of these days is like, it doesn't matter where or what path each of us have been on. We've come to similar conclusions, and being able to confer with each other, it helps empower the greater tapestry that we're all a part of weaving together. So it's just a wonderful thing to be able to find others that are on that path and becoming more the observer than the victim.
The witness.
The witness. Yes.
This is my new favorite word, the witness. I'm just like, as I'm blogging, I'm like, I already changed my Facebook profile because I had in there witness. It's now witness. I'm just like, this is my new favorite word. I'm soaking it all up.
Beautiful.
All right. So,
lovely.
Wait. I want to share what I am cultivating.
Yes.
Please.
You just use the word cultivate? Hold the freaking phone.
So when beautiful Taylor was sharing his talk about time and space magic, we did that little meditation and what we were truly calling in. And I was like, that's yummy. And in big orange letters, I have vacation with my kids in a warm tropical beach and a retreat of 10 to 12 women in a tropical place. Yes. Like, that's part of my biggest vision. It has been in a hot minute, but I'm sharing that in words now, which is super fucking exciting. So I am cultivating, calling that through and anchoring that in. Thank you for being a witness.
Oh, and it is done. Thank you.
Yes. I can already see the palm trees and the salty breeze and the warm beach and the warm sand and the warm sun, the smell of the ocean. I can feel it. I can see it. I can touch it. I can smell it.
Yeah. And in the interest of transparency and sharing and amplifying in Sacred Witness, when he asked that question, this is something that I've just been holding the seed of in my heart, but it's definitely like crystallizing more and more every year, every time I sit and do magic. And definitely when I do magic with like the opposite sex, because of that union of energy. And I feel like Taylor's masculine embodied presence really brought that balance and that cohesion for the entire summit. He's an incredibly powerful magician. And what I wrote down is completely paid off my own land, a house, and never again having to think of how are my bills going to get paid. Focus on my writing so I can focus on the creativity, so I can focus on service. The soul salon that I have is not my moneymaker. It's a place of service. It is a temple. It is a place where people come to receive what they need. It's not a place for profit. And so, I don't know how, but that's okay. Just as long as I don't get in my own way, right? And then I also wrote vacation. There's 3 places that I have been wanting to go, and I've never spoken this out loud because I've been hoarding my dreams, and that's not really helping. Like Taylor was saying, if you're manifesting and you're just here. So expanding that, I am calling in a vacation to Greece, Egypt, and Bali. These are 3 places that I've wanted to go. I want to go there. I want to play with the elephants. I want to visit the pyramids and do juicy magic there and record music. I want to go to Greece and visit my teacher in her temple. And the word that coalesced all of this, and I'm actually using a word for every year for the last 8 years. And this is a book that I'm publishing next year where I talk about my 8-year journey of awakening. And my word for next year is luxury. Fuck not. I have worked my ass off, and we are wealthy. To desire ease is our birthright, right? Like the tree doesn't struggle to bear its fruit.
Right.
Oh my God, tell us what just came through. That was gold.
The yearly word. My word, I gotta be all excited. My word for last year was expansion.
Oh,
Baby, look at this.
that was my word last year. My word for last year was expansion, and holy shit, that kicked my ass.
I got tears.
What's your word for next year?
I don't know. That's what I just asked. I'm like, what was your word for last year? That's my quantum leap. Y'all, that's what quantum leaping is. We are holding the highest vision. And what that means is doing the things every day to create those things. And then looking back like, holy shit, I did all those things. We became that person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We acted, we lived, we ate, we breathed, we being that person.
Yes.
That's what quantum shifting is.
Yeah.
Doing all these steps that we've all shared, do all these 5 days. Like we're all doing the same steps, just in a different wording.
Exactly.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah. And that's kind of like the recap of the day, right? We talked about quantum shifting by embracing the dualities, embracing the darkness, yes, Taylor said, instead of holding space, being in the space, right? Becoming more aware of our language and how we use our words and how that aligns with our thoughts and our emotions and our actions in everyday life. Go do your damn dishes, sweep your floors, right? Like think about the most important guest that you've ever had in your life. This guest is bringing you the opportunity of a lifetime. This shit's going to change your world. This guest is going to make all your dreams come true. Is your house ready to receive this guest? Do you have clean sheets? Do you have clean towels? Do you have food in the pantry? Have you taken a shower, and does your face not have crusties on it? That guest is your highest self knocking at the door. But there's all this clutter and trash in the door. The house stinks. Who's going to want to come into that, right? So that's the focus right now. Amplify focus on really purifying your temple. And continuing to do the work one breath at a time, one step at a time. I know in AA and NA, they say one day at a time. I was in NA years ago. One day is a way too fucking long, okay? Give me one breath at a time, right? Abraham even talks about this, right? 20 seconds. Even 20 seconds could feel too long. It's like, holy crap, I'm just counting the minutes. But if we just focus on one breath, enjoy the journey. I'm hosting a ceremony here at the Soul Salon on January 1st, a cacao ceremony and sensual dance. And the theme is enjoy the journey. So let us move forward now as we seal the summit, okay, with enjoying the present moment, finding those little moments of joy that make the more difficult things a little easier to navigate, a little, dare I say, fun. Whoa, let's sing a song to the toilet while it's getting a bath. I bet you that bathtub is so excited to get a bath. I love giving my dishes a bath. I'm like, all right, sing fairies. We're about to have a little sudsy party. Are you ready? Open your gullets. I know it sounds really silly, but it can make that mundane so much more fun. In closing, I would love to read the message from the Oracle deck. We never did the dance movement.
What is that?
All the threads of fate must bend. The key words are being flexible, cultivating resilience and adaptability. There is no such thing as a situation that is perfectly set in one state of being. Nothing difficult and painful will remain that way forever, and nothing joyous and free will remain in the same expression forever either. Imagine the weaving of the threads of fate in the tapestry of life. The threads must bend and move as they are pliable, supple, and not meant to be rigid sticks. Life is the same way. Your experience of life now requires you to be adaptable to conditions and flexible as to how you respond to them. In this way, you build up a resilience to meet life on life's terms, while simultaneously continuing to pay attention to your dreams and desires for your most meaningful life. Seen this way, all of life is an experience. You are a story that is always in motion, changing, dancing with the dream weaver, surrendering your desires, allowing curiosity to lead you in the dark and uncharted territories ahead of you. Right now, it is time to let go of the rigid ideas of how you think you should be, how the form of things should be, how another person should be, how, let it all go now. And just allow a state of wonder and curiosity to lead you. Ask yourself from that place of wonder, what might I discover here? Let go of the assumptions. Be present to the beautiful opportunity offered to you right now. Fate has brought you to this moment, yet destiny will be what you make it to mean. Let's take a big, deep breath. Inhale. And release. Real ease. Big deep breath, inhale and exhale, letting it all go. And as the song plays, bringing all the movement practices that we in to seal it into your body. This incredibly powerful week where we have shifted through multiple timelines to anchor in your highest timeline. The name of this song is Your Soul Goes On. And I felt that that was very appropriate for our closing today. Little circles, little swipes, little taps, taps, taps. Yes. Breathe in and feel how you have recalibrated your entire state of consciousness. You may not see it in the physical yet, but you can definitely feel it. I know I can. Yes. Yes. Beautiful. Calling all your power back to you now. I call all my power back to me now. I receive my highest worth. I claim my space in this world. I am aligned with my highest timeline. I am anchored into my sovereign truth. I am embodied in divine grace. Right now, through all time and space, for all my ancestors and all my descendants that are yet to be, I am sacred space. I am wealth. I am health. I am holy. I am peace. I am harmony. I am joy. I am luminescent radiance. I am divine. I am here. And I am so fine. Are you so fine? See a lateral in, big deep breath. Final 2 big breaths. Inhale. And exhale. Last breath, sealing it all into every cell, every fiber, every organ of your being. every timeline. There's only one timeline now. It's your highest timeline. In this here now, eternal moment. Blessed be.
Blessed be. Beautiful Lady Jasmine. It's been so yummy. The different days, the different experiences. Thank you. I wanted to close out space with the drum and really anchor this in. Really anchoring this into our lives, to the Great Mother, to Mother Earth. It's solstice, like really feeling the juice, the ooey gooey yumminess, the compassion, the curiosity, the uncomfortableness. Let's call that forward. Taking off my shoes, getting into breath, getting into movement, shaking, touching.
Sounding.
Ah.
Wow. Lady Anika and I are now closing, sealing the sacred space of ceremony, of transformation, of soul evolution that we have been in for the last 5 days, sealing this in now. Allow yourself to receive this transmission of sealing in, knowing that it's going to take at least 7 days for your physical body to recalibrate. And as you are recalibrating, you might experience flu-like symptoms as your body is completing its final shed. Be gentle with yourself, nourish, hydrate, journal, rest, and check in with us if you need that extra support. So let's seal that in.
Really holding the vision.
I will just hold this while Lady Anika completes our seal.
Plants and animals. Holding the vision. Anchoring that in our bodies, in our hearts. Feeling it in ourselves. Feeling it in our bones. Our skin. Our toes. Who are you? It's time to remember. It's time to get on the train. There it is. There it is. Feel it, anger? What's your dream? What's your passion? What are you wanting to remember of your God sparkness? Of your inner light? Of your authenticity? Of your wild heart? Of your dreams? To the feet, to the floor, to the earth, to the mycelium, to the trees. To the stars. We're all one. And a playfulness of who you are, of your imagination, of your creativity, of your passion, of wonder. Calling it in, anchoring it in. You are ready. Aho. And a release. Mm. And not to trust. Thank you, Great Mother. Thank you, Great Father. Thank you, Great Spirit. Thank you to the elementals, the guides, the angels, to our team, to the Council of Light, the Sacred Board of Directors, the Fae, the Fawn, the Flora, Psyllium, spirits of the forest, the land, of all space and time. We close, consecrate, we seal, and so it is. Mm.
Deep, deep bow to every single one of you for showing up in all your ways. Thank you for sharing your vulnerability, for commenting, for engaging, for supporting yourself, for nourishing yourself at this time, for supporting us in this vision and expansion that we are in. Deep bow to Lady Anika for birthing this beautiful container for us to dance and weave in. Deep bow to Mama Earth, who holds us and allows us and supports and nourishes us so that we may show up in our fullest selves.
Supposed to be, and so it is. Happy solstice. Okay, beautiful souls. Release. Close this beautiful sacred space. We will share on the page about the extension for the VIP and the power behind the days, the power behind the connection and the 21-day immersive journey to really seal, to anchor, to call in, to be present, to be held accountable, and to have somebody walk with you to support you in your dreams, your journey, and your expansion. Mwah. Are we ready?
Bye, beautiful peoples. We hope to see you at the VIP Lounge on January 30th. Have a sacred solstice, a blessed Yules, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Muy Christmas.
Hard to spit out. Love you, beautiful souls. We will see you soon.